Divorce in the Stone Age may have been simpler than you think. No courts or lawyers were needed, no need to split bank accounts, and no piece of paper dragging on for years. One person only had to leave the old sleeping place, but precisely because there was no paperwork, it could also be more dangerous than today. Because what you lost was not just a spouse. The four things you could lose were your share of food, kin protection, someone to care for the child, your seat beside the fire, and the right to be seen as belonging to the camp. In the hunter-gatherer era, a marriage might not end with a signature. It could end with a hide being moved away from its old place. That morning, she did not bring the hide back to where the two of them usually slept. No one said anything immediately, but the whole camp saw it. Last night, that hide had still covered the two of them. This morning it was rolled up and placed beside her mother. The man sat a little farther away, near his group of brothers. He did not call to her. She also did not look toward him for too long. The child still did not understand what had happened. He only saw his mother sitting somewhere else. His father was quieter than usual, and the adults around them suddenly spoke more softly. In a world with no marriage certificates, sometimes divorce began like that. Not with a declaration, but with an object moved from its familiar place. But to understand why that hide carried such weight, we need to understand what marriage really was then. Because marriage among hunter-gatherer groups was not just two people liking each other and then living together. In a comparative study of 190 hunter-gatherer societies, researchers recorded that in 85% of the sample, marriages arranged by parents or close relatives were the main form. About 80% of the sample had some form of exchange between the two families, such as service for the wife's family, bride price, or similar obligations. That figure does not mean all ancient groups married in the same way, but it breaks a modern illusion that before states existed, marriage was merely two free individuals, liking each other and staying together. But reality was more complicated. Two people did not only connect their lives, they connected two clusters of people. A man did not merely marry a woman, he entered into a relationship with her family. Her gathering group, people who would watch whether he worked hard, whether he shared his portion, whether he lost his temper, whether he was worthy for their daughter to stay beside. A woman also did not merely choose a man. She entered his network, where there were relatives, obligations, and protection, but also risks of being pulled far away from her own blood relatives. So when the animal hide changed places, it did not only say that the two no longer slept together, it said that an entire network of relationships had to be rearranged. The strange thing is, in some recorded hunter-gatherer communities, separation could happen with very little procedure. Among the Hadza in Tanzania, ethnographic data describe divorce as quite common, especially in the early years of marriage. And sometimes it simply meant the couple stopped living together. At first, this may sound very free, but think carefully. When there is no court, no clear clause, the judgment does not disappear. It shifts to the people living around you, who still lets you sit beside them, who still shares food, who still holds your child, who still talks to you the next morning. The morning passed slowly. The woman went to fetch water with her mother and an older sister. Before, she could place the water jar beside the shared sleeping place. Today, she placed it on the other side of the camp. Just a small detail, but in a group of people living so close together, small details are very hard to hide. A relationship does not disappear in the mind. It disappears in habits. When those actions change direction, the marriage also begins to fall apart. By mealtime, the change became clearer. A small animal was brought back. There was not much meat, but enough for the whole camp to notice how it was divided. In a mobile group, food is not just food, it is a map of social relationships. Before, the man's portion might have gone toward the shared sleeping place. Today, his hand paused longer. He gave one part to his brothers. A small part still went to the child, but it was not placed before the woman as before. No one shouted. No one announced a separation. But the path of the piece of meat had changed, and when food changed direction, the whole camp understood one thing. The fracture was no longer only in words. It had entered the way they lived. In a small society, private matters are rarely only private matters. Someone hears an argument. Someone remembers an act of neglect. Someone may see a bruise. A night when the husband does not return to camp can create rumors. A meal that is not shared can say more than an insult. There is no judge, but there are 20 pairs of eyes. There is no verdict. But there is an empty space beside the fire. There is no lawyer, but there is family, the hunting group, the elders in the camp. Each person is deciding whom they will stand closer to. The judgment is not read aloud. It appears through distance. One person is called closer. One person is left sitting on the edge. One person is advised to return to their relatives. One person is told to wait a few days. Do not make everything worse. One person is protected. One person is blamed. The child feels the change before understanding it. He runs from his mother to his father, then back toward his grandmother. He stands between two clusters of adults, holding a small piece of bone in his hand. He does not know what custody is, much less what divorce is. He only knows that today, if he sits near his father for too long, his mother falls silent. If he sleeps beside his mother, his father looks over. Today, people talk about custody, support payments, visitation schedules in a hunter-gatherer camp. The question takes a much more concrete shape. Who gives the child food? Who carries him when his mother digs for tubers? Who comforts him when he has a fever? Who teaches him to track animal footprints? Who remembers his share of meat when prey is divided? Children in many hunter-gatherer communities do not grow up, only with their biological parents. A recent study of the Mbengeli people in Central Africa observed that the ratio of caregivers to each child was greater than 5-to-1. In other words, a child could live within a network of many hands: mother, grandmother, older siblings, aunts, uncles, parents' friends, people who carried, played with, taught, scolded, fed, and watched over the child. So when parents separate, what is shaken is not only the relationship between two adults, it is the map of care around the child. If the breakup happens peacefully, the child may still move back and forth between the two sides. If relatives on both sides still preserve dignity for one another, he still has many arms to return to. But if the fracture turns into hostility, the child may feel his small world being pulled in two directions. Modern people think divorce is about dividing property. But in this camp, what is harder to divide is care. In the afternoon, the woman held a small bracelet. It may have been a string of beads. It may have been a piece of shell. It may have been an object once given, on an occasion witnessed by the whole camp. Do not think it was valuable only because it was beautiful. It was valuable because it had once connected the two sides. An object like that is never completely innocent. When the relationship is stable, it is a sign, a memory, something others look at and understand. These two people belong to each other in some way. But when everything breaks, that object changes, meaning, what does it mean to keep it? What does it mean to return it? What does it mean to give it to her mother, to keep, to throw it on the ground? What does it mean? No lawyer explains it, but the adults in the camp understand that the object is not only in her hand, it lies between two groups of relatives. Divorce does not only cut two people away from each other, it can damage a bridge between two groups among the Hadza. Researchers have noted post-marital residence can be flexible. Young couples are often said to live near the wife's relatives. In the early years, after having a few children, they may continue living with the wife's side, move toward the husband's side, or live in a camp with fewer close relatives. This makes the story more complicated, because if a woman is living near her mother and sisters, she has a way back. If a man has hunting brothers and relatives nearby, he also has a foothold if someone has lived too long among the other person's relatives. If they have few allies, if they are seen as the one at fault, then separation is no longer leaving a marriage. It is leaving the place where they are recognized. And in a hunter-gatherer world, losing recognition can be more dangerous than losing love. As the sun began to sink, she tied up her bag. There were not many things to carry. A small tool, a few pieces of hide, the bracelet, some food, perhaps something belonging to the child. People in hunter placids, gatherer times, could not own too many heavy things, but precisely because they had few possessions, each thing carried more, meaning she did not cry in front of everyone. Or perhaps she had cried while fetching water. The man did not stand up right away. Or perhaps he wanted to stand up, but his brothers sitting beside him kept him in place. The child looked at the bag, then at the animal hide. He understood something in his body, before having the language to name it. Tonight would be different. Divorce in hunter-gatherer times could therefore be both freer and colder than today. Freer, because one did not necessarily have to wait for a legal system to grant permission. Colder because if no one stood on your side, freedom was just another way of saying you were alone. When night fell, the fire became the place where everything was revealed. The firelight did not only warm people, it drew the boundary of the community who sat inside the circle of light, who was on the edge, who was called closer, who had to find a sleeping place alone. Those things did not need to be written into law to be powerful. The woman spread the hide in its new place. The child lay beside her, but his eyes still looked toward his father. The man sat on the other side of the fire, holding a tool, his face not completely turned away. The elder spoke quietly. Wind passed through the grass, and the fire crackled softly. No one declared that they were divorced, but the objects had spoken for themselves. The hide did not return to its old place. The meat did not follow its old path. The bracelet was no longer innocent in her hand. The child no longer ran through a simple map. There was an empty space by the fire that everyone tried not to look at for too long. Today we have laws, papers, procedures, custody, shared property, courts, signatures. Those things are sometimes cold, sometimes exhausting, but they try to do something that human beings have had to do for a very long time, turn a breakage into a new order. And in a hunter-gatherer camp, that order was written with smaller things, where a hide was spread, whose hand gave food to whom, which person a child slept beside, a mother pulling her daughter closer, a man being called by his brothers to go hunting the next morning, or not. Perhaps the most frightening thing about divorce at that time was not losing the person you loved, but after losing that person, having to wait to see where the small world around you would place you again. Inside the circle of fire, or outside in the darkness, belonging to whom, or no longer belonging to anyone. That night, as everyone gradually fell asleep, the animal hide still lay in its new place. It did not speak, but in a world with no paper to tear, sometimes such a silent object was already the clearest verdict.